today, taking advantage of this break in the weather, I want to check off some of the things on my early spring garden checklist, and I wanted to bring you along with me so I could share what are some of the things that I'm doing to set myself up for a successful garden season with some of these early spring gardening things. So today, we are going to get into how I'm preparing my beds, pruning back some of my fruit-bearing trees and perennial things, what I'm doing to get ready for the garden season this year, and what I'm looking forward to planting out very soon. We are expecting some rain today, so I'm gonna have to be quick. One of the first spring garden tasks that I'm gonna try and tackle is some pruning. So let's head over to the apple trees so we can do that.
As I'm looking at my apple tree to see what needs to be pruned, I'm looking first at the direction in which the branches are pointing. The ideal shape for apple tree is something like a vase, something that's more open in the center and all the branches are coming outwards from it. So I'm looking for any places where branches are crisscrossing other branches, where they're touching or rubbing, or if there's any broken or damaged branches. And I want to take those parts off because that's ultimately going to lead to weaknesses in the branches, as well as right here I'm showing that there's some branches that are growing into my pathway, and so those I'm just removing just for convenience of moving through the garden and overall shape.
So this one might be harder to see, so I'm going to try and point it out here for you. But right here we've got what looks like 3 or 4 branches that are all crisscrossing. What this is going to do, in addition to not having the optimal amount of spacing for leaves and fruit and airflow, is also where the branches are touching. That creates a friction point where branches could potentially have, you can see how there's sort of like a rubbing right here. The branches rubbing is an open spot or a wound in the tree that could potentially breed infection or just cause the tree to be less healthy. So I'm going to take out where I see some of these branches crisscrossing. And I think I'm going to start by taking actually this one here. And sort of already there's a little bit, quite a bit more airflow. And then I might, and then I've got to choose between this branch and this branch. This one, I think, I don't know, we might lose both. Let's see. I think I can take this one here. I'm trying to cut them right above a node, which will cause them to branch out in a different direction. So I'm going to take this one here, cutting at a 45-degree angle, which you can't see. So I'm going to take this one here, cutting at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so already look how much more open this space is. We're creating a lot more space for fruit. But still, we have this as an issue. So still you've got this crisscrossing right here. So I'm gonna have to take something out of this area. Probably gonna take this branch off of this main leader. This branch here. This is still crisscross touching, so I'm gonna bring it a little bit further down. Take that down as well. Better. This is looking a lot better. Still I'm seeing this branch crisscrossing. Amazing. Look how much more open it is in here.
After I finish with my pruning tasks of my apple trees and other fruit trees in my yard, it is time for me to focus on preparing my vegetable garden area. So I've been wanting to add to my raised beds, but I didn't have in the budget this year to buy any new raised bed fixtures. So instead I am trying to create an in-ground bed by hilling up amount of soil, and I'm refreshing some pathways by putting down some cardboard boxes and later on adding mulch on top. I am not an expert in this type of gardening, but I've been trying to increase my skills, my knowledge around soil and soil health, and how I can translate that into being able to work with the soil that I have in my yard, as opposed to having to buy in so much soil in order to do gardening. So what I'm planning to do, since the soil in this area is already pretty loose and workable, is that I'm hoping to just add some compost or whatever other nutrients I need to these hilled mounds in order to be able to plant in them, mulch around the rows, and then over time work with the soil, build it up in health and fertility so that these beds can be just as successful as any of my other raised garden beds. The next early spring garden project that I want to tackle is mulching. I would like to put down some cardboard boxes in all of my pathways between my garden beds to help keep down the weed pressure. This area, before it was a garden area, there was an old large tree stump here. Last year I had the stump ground down, spread out a bunch of mulch, and that did pretty well for my first season gardening in this house. But there are some spots now where some grass and other weeds are starting to come up. So adding the cardboard boxes and the pathways in the rows in between my different garden beds will allow me to suppress some of that weed pressure. I have a large pile of wood chip mulch in the front of my house that I got from Chip Drop last year in the fall, so I have plenty of mulch to work with. I'm putting down cardboard boxes, trying to remove as much of the plastic tape or labels as possible so we're not adding plastic into our soil. And then just reusing whatever cardboard boxes I have around the house in these pathways as a way of suppressing the weeds.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes.
A few things that I've been saving that I really wanted to winter sow. Well, I guess it's basically spring now. I don't even know what to call it anymore. But there are a couple of cold weather crops that I really wanted to get into my beds in the beginning of the season. I could leave those, but they're just sort of getting in the way. Okay. If you've not seen this tip before, a photo box case is a great way to store your seeds. And I had these ones marked start on March 15th. So that's what we're going to do. And it feels a little bit crazy, like clearly it must still be too early to be planting anything. And I've seen a bunch online. Sugar snap peas. It's going to be the first thing that I'm going to plant in here. I'm going to plant it along the edge of this fencing so that it can trellis on the fence. I've seen a bunch online where people actually will soak their sweet pea seeds overnight in water. I don't know that that's 100% necessary because, at least maybe not here, because I feel like we get so much rain and the soil is already pretty damp because we got rain earlier today. So, not just kind of resisting the urge to plant them too deep. Okay.
Won't stop for traffic light.
Let's see. I'm probably gonna sow them more thickly than they actually need to be, just so that we can be sure that we get some.
Let's figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high. Even if the sky is falling down.
Next up, let's do some Swiss chard. Okay, and for the Swiss chard, I'm just gonna make a little line like that.
But we get up and start from the ground.
Sprinkle a few tomato seeds.
I really wanna know if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs.
I feel like carrots are one that I can't help but to sow a little bit too heavy. I'm trying to space them out as best I can.
Sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down.
Okay,
The sky is falling
there we go. First seeds of 2025 in the garden. Here I'm hoping to sow some chamomile. One of my garden goals for the year is that I'd like to do a tea and herb garden. So I think my plan is to just clear a section, and I don't know if these are better to start as direct sown or in seedling trays. So I think I'm gonna take half my seed pack and sow it in the garden because it recommends to sow outside.
Not exactly sure what happened here, but it seems that at this point my microphone stopped working, and so there's unfortunately no sound for the rest of this video. But I was saying that I was really excited to plant this chamomile I'd seen in different places. I believe on the seed pack it says to start 4 to 6 weeks before your average last frost date. And even though we're still a bit ahead of that, I'd seen some other literature that said that chamomile could be winter sown. And so I felt pretty confident that I could start this plant early and that it would just come up when the weather conditions were right for it to grow. But I was really excited about starting a herb/tea garden this year. And so this is one of the first pieces of that, was getting this chamomile in the ground.
I'm using old window blinds as my plant labels.
And my final task of the day was going to be planting some of my seedlings that I had grown indoors. This is a bit of a risky strategy because I had not initially planned on putting any seedlings out today, so I had not hardened off my seedlings. I didn't do the various in and out getting them ready for the outside world. But I had a few strong seedlings of some cabbage and kale that were in the house, and I had more seedlings than really what I needed. So I decided to take the biggest and strongest ones and just put them out now because we're having a couple warm days. And these are frost-tolerant plants that, once established, would do fine surviving cold temperatures. So even if we got another frost, even if we got another snow, it wasn't going to hurt these plants. And if I lost them, I had more of the cabbage and kale seedlings inside. So I felt confident that planting them was a risk, but probably not the worst gardening mistake that I've ever made. Part of my thinking in wanting to get these seedlings in the ground early was really the idea of succession sowing. I know that I'm not going to be able to significantly expand my garden beds this year, but because I do have this time in the early season and I have several cold weather crops that I know are not going to do well once it gets super warm here, and in Ohio we typically have a bit of a shorter spring where it's cold for a really long time, like winter's never ending, and then all of a sudden it's warm. So I really struggle with growing cold weather crops, things in the brassica family, like the kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, etc. Because by the time the plants are strong enough to go outside, typically it's too warm and then they start to flower and bolt, and I don't get a chance to harvest from them. So I was thinking if I plant them early, well before last frost, then they might not grow a ton while it's still super cold, but there's a chance that they can mature before we get 80-degree temps and higher, which was really my thought. And come, Memorial Day, June time, when it's time to switch over to summer crops, things like squash, bell peppers, tomatoes, etc., these will more or less be at the end of their lifespan, and I'll be able to just flip this bed from the cold weather crops to the warm weather crops. So since nothing else can grow at this time of year, might as well try and grow some kale and cabbage. Bringing back my hula hoops for my DIY low tunnel. This was one of the best hacks that I came up with last year, which was that I took some hula hoops from a dollar store, cut them in half, or cut, a section so they were open at the bottom, and stuck them into the beds and used them as a frame to put up some covers on them. So I believe last year I used some thick construction plastic to cover them because that's just what I had, and I had my sweet potatoes growing under it, and it worked really well both to create a really warm environment that the sweet potatoes love to grow in, and also it prevented some of the critters from eating up all of the sweet potato vines. But it's a dual purpose tool because I can also use those hula hoops now to put some frost cover fabric over my young seedlings, which I'm hoping will help to protect them from some of the wind and cold chill, since I didn't give them that period of hardening off or transitioning them to the outside. I'm hoping that this will help make it a little bit easier for them to survive those first few days outside in the cold while they're getting established. do wish I knew what I was trying to say here in the outro. I'm sure it was brilliant. You're gonna have to take my word for it. But since that audio is gone, I will say thank you so much for sharing your time with me today as I'm out gardening, prepping for spring. And if you are thinking about getting out into your garden to get ready for spring, think about how you are preparing your soil, getting your beds ready. Do you need to do any mulching or any prep around your garden? And if you are eager to start some seeds, think about some cold weather crops and things that wouldn't mind getting another frost, especially if you're living in an area like I am in Zone 6 in Northeast Ohio, where we are likely to get more snow. Think about things that might be frost tolerant if you are hoping to plant out this early. If you are curious what things I'm planning to put out into my winter garden or early spring garden, I will link the video in the end screen where I started a bunch of seeds for the early springtime, late winter time, all of my cold weather crops that I started inside, and things that I am winter sowing and hopefully will be coming up very soon. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.